Hello everybody. Today I will be giving you three pretty three of the most important or three of the tips that were most important for my very easy and straightforward time into completing going through and completing my bachelor's thesis. Doing a thesis project takes quite a lot of effort because there are like a lot of things that play a role in finishing such a project. It's not just programming, it's not just planning, it's not just writing. There's a lot of in between and a lot of back and forth, a lot of iteration, and I'm hoping with those tips you would also be able to actually focus on what motivates you for that project and not get lost and actually kind of gather your thoughts and always keep your main thought. The first major point or tip would be to start your planning phase way in advance, way earlier than you would actually put a real time frame for the project. You should definitely be starting to look for the different available projects that your university, for example, is offering at least 3 or 4 months before you actually start implementing those or just write doing your thesis. Um, and yeah, pick topics that are interesting to you, topics that will motivate you. Keep in mind what the department thinks about or kind of suggests that people doing those topics should know, like their requirements. Try to align those things. Don't pick something that is super hard or that something that wouldn't really interest you, and then try to contact those departments and see if those projects are still available, because a lot of the times there are a lot of students that will try and take such projects, and the website is not really always going to be up to date, so you might start planning and get motivated about a topic, but then when you actually start talking with the department, you might find out that this topic is already been taken. So keep that in mind. Have multiple options that are interesting to you. Kind of treat it as a job application. Kind of like there is a market of different opportunities, and you're basically filtering out the ones that you don't like and focusing on the ones that you like. And still among those, there's probably a lot of opportunities that will not really net you anything. And the last point when it comes to this early planning phase is to look for example, maybe you get lucky and you find people in some departments that you already know. This is, I think, a very good way in approaching such a project, because for example, I found that one of my previous tutors, like they were tutoring for a previous course, that they are a research assistant. They are basically a researcher at one of the departments, and I remember having respected that person, and I always participated in their class. So they also knew me. So when I contacted them, they had no problem with suggesting topics that were even not listed, like pretty cool topics that were that person actually wanted to do themselves but couldn't really do it at that time. So he basically found me a job, right? And and then working with those people is actually easier because you don't really have to risk much. You kind of know them already, right? So this is a very big, a very good way of getting on the right foot, right? I don't know the term, but starting on the right foot basically with your project. Now heading over to the second point, I titled it "Motivate Before You Commit." And this is basically when you are already given some topic, basically you are accepted to work on a or to do a tryout on one of those topics that you chose. you actually have to try and see if that is um, really the right topic that you want to be doing. So what you would do at that point, or what I would do and what I did is I would cover as much information about this topic. I would do some research on the ideas involved with it, some of the theory. I would actually look at the motivations behind the project that you're going to do. Like, what is the goal? What does this achieve? Does this motivate me, right? Um, and you really need to pay attention if this idea is actually motivating you to like, if it's something that you would actually be proud of accomplishing, because I don't know, I think you should definitely treat it as like you are searching for a job, because you are actually committing your next 6 to 8 months onto working with this, and you really want to be willing to face and solve all the different problems that will come with it. So maybe discuss this with your advisor, see what their perspective on the topic is. Maybe ask them about the skills that will be required, what we will be learning, if they think that your current skill set will be able to handle the challenge, and so on. But definitely try and see if you are motivated about this idea, and if you see that it is not really what you're looking for, start looking for alternatives. And like I said, don't try to commit to your next 6 to 8 months to this grind if you're not really going to be proud of what you accomplish in the end. Third, and well, not the most important one, but the one that really helped me get a grip of everything that was happening, materials wise, goal wise, theory wise, planning and structure wise, and even just the time frame, having control over the time frame that you are given, um, was actually to organize the task as a working project. Maybe I think it would definitely help you if you have had the chance to work as a working student in a development position before, so you actually know what they are doing when it comes to project management, ticketing systems, and all that. But before we even talk about this aspect, let's talk about the organizational part when it comes to time. And my advice is to start work as soon as you got an agreement that you would be trying to work with that project. It will take, after you get an agreement from your advisor, it will take some weeks before they finalize and make a formal document that you are doing this thesis. And during that time, you actually have 3 weeks in advance, right? So what I did, and I think it makes a lot of sense, start gathering as much information as you can about the project. Start thinking about all the different things that you would be doing and research on them, research the theory, research code that you might be using, research programming languages or programming principles that you might be using. Do as much as possible from that aspect, and this will kind of ensure that you have done a good chunk of the let's say research work before even starting on the main time frame, and it would also assure that you get kind of like running start. For me personally, I was kind of 15% done with the project before the time to do it even started. And I don't think that's a I think that's nobody will actually be mad or like not allow you to do that, because it's just reading, for example, part, and it can definitely help you out. It will basically give you an extra month to work on that project. And I think this was some of the things that really pushed me ahead of the time frame, so I had time to figure out some bugs, for example, later on, or I had time to go back and revise my writing when my advisor was not really happy with some parts, and I was never really pressured with time due to this fact. And of course, the other major aspect, because the other major aspect why I didn't really have problems with time was, like I mentioned, this work project discipline, where you're treating your when you're treating all your work, mental and code work and programming work, as a basically industry style project. I made a GitHub account, and I used a ticketing system, and I will be going over that in the next cut. A very good approach is to use basically Git and some sort of ticketing system, because for once this is probably going to be how you will later also be working, and you can more or less kill two birds with one shot, right? So what I did was I created my own project. It's called Thesis. You give it a name and some description, and as you can see, you can have your, basically you can start practicing working as a real developer, and what this would also give you is an option to switch back and forth between versions and track your commits, so nothing gets really lost. You can have different test branches for new features that you're working on, and it is like for a bigger project, I think it is a must-have. Otherwise, you cannot really keep track of everything. There are mostly going to be too many things to keep in mind, and something like this is very, very useful. The second thing about this process would be to have a ticketing system. For example, I use ZenHub because it is something I had to use at my previous job, so I was kind of familiar with it. It offers you a way to integrate it directly into GitHub, which is pretty nice. You install the extension, and then when you reload the page, you will have the extension appear here. So when you click on that, you can see it's a very good way to keep a visual overview of what your current progress is. So basically you could have things that are still just ideas that you have for later. I would love for this to scroll. For some reason it doesn't. And for example, you can also have things that you are currently working on, and this would be basically your steps. That you can organize your steps based on what is called epics, and you can assign milestones to them. And an epic would basically be, for example, the first part would be, the first epic could be your research phase, and the second epic could be your programming phase, and the third epic would be your writing phase, for example, right? And then you put sub-tickets in each of those epics, and for example, you would have a ticket like this, for example, it's in the backlog because you would still just be gathering ideas, but it would be like the next thing to do. And for example, the one that you're currently doing could be something like you are still working on the thesis structure, and you're still not sure how to structure everything. And the good thing about those tickets is you can basically document everything here based on date, and just edit and just expand on your thoughts and kind of document them, so you wouldn't really forget what you were doing. You're putting structure into your work. As you can see, I have basically documented a rough outline of how I will structure my my final paper, how many pages it would contain, what kind of key aspects each part would contain, and stuff like that. When I'm done with this, and I think it's good, and maybe I just don't have any more time left for this, like for example, you can set your own deadlines and like milestones. You can just put it for QA.
Then at some point you go here, you have a final look, maybe you discuss it with your advisor. If everybody agrees, then it will be a done thing, right? And at some point you will close it, and then just like that, you have your thesis structure to kind of go back and reference at any given point in time. For example, also when doing experiments, you can basically document some findings that you did, and later on when it comes time to write stuff or just prove stuff, or implement new features, you can go back and kind of see what you did, see what the outcome was until that point, and so on.
When it comes to thinking about the contents of a project and the three different phases, being the research, the testing, and some kind of like prototype experimenting phase, and then writing phase, and maybe on the presentation at the end. I think I will leave this discussion for a future video, because I think there are plenty of details to discuss on about that. But for now, I hope you liked this video. If so, maybe please hit the like button, and maybe even subscribe for future videos like this. And I really hope these tips about really having control over your project will help you out with your bachelor's thesis. And yeah, good luck and have fun.